all about,
It's not so good at picking up long distances, that's the only thing.
about the spokesman, Derek Jarman, and why he chose him. Tell me all that again. That was interesting.
Was it?
Yeah, the mouthpiece for you and how I hate doing
Yeah, they are horrible, aren't they? They are horrible. Conversations are alright.
Well, that's what I mean. It's better to have a conversation, have the tape on, and just like hide it and you forget.
And then you just ramble on, and then you get some good bits that are just sort of unconscious. The spokesman. The spokesman.
Have you put it back on?
Yeah, this will probably sound stilted, but at least it's a way to begin, isn't it? And after all, beginnings are the hardest part, as they always say to people trying to learn to write books. Get your first sentence and the rest of the novel writes itself. That's what they used to say to me at school. I always thought that was a pretty stupid idea, actually. You're going to be done on your own, but we're not. No comment. She's always at the phone. You're always at the phone, Paula. No. Yeah, the spokesman. Well, the body of the spokesman is Derek Jarman, the filmmaker who made Jubilee and The Tempest and Sebastian. Where was I? Yeah.
He's the body.
He's the body, the person who appears on screen. And what he's actually reciting on screen, oh fucking hell, is Chaucer, Old English. So when he's talking, he's got no idea what the speech that he's going to be used for is going to be. And what we did was we made about half an hour stock footage of him from different angles with close-ups and long shots and so on. And that means that whenever we want any speeches, we can edit the footage in different ways. So the more often you see speeches, the more you become aware that the same bits of film are being used over and over and over again in different order.
You can put,
And also you notice that the voice isn't always in sync. The voice is Mr. Sebastian. Is the voice.
Yeah,
and he is the guy who does all the piercings and the tattoos for Psychic TV and the Psychic Youth as well. And he's the voice on the message on the first LP.
Yeah.
And he's also the voice on the new LP when Geoff's getting his tattoo in the track Eden.
I don't remember.
There's a buzzing noise like all the way through it on side 2, first track or so. It's quite pleasant, yeah. And you hear him walking across his tattoo parlour with a bit of paper with the design on as well.
And that's polychronic.
That LP is, yeah, and the tattoo is, yeah.
What do you mean the tattoo? Oh,
because we wanted a sound. Yeah, we recorded him actually having a tattoo at the base of his spine.
You can look at it.
It's only tiny.
But it must hurt there.
Yeah, a bit, I should think.
It was tender afterwards, because it was right at the base of my spine and it bruised it.
Really?
Here.
What is it? Like an infinity thing?
Yeah,
A little infinity snake.
a sword in the middle.
Quite good.
It's the sigil of what?
Set.
right.
Sigil of Set, which is
S-E-T.
the real form of the devil before it became a Christian form associated with evil.
The pagan version.
It's called Shaitan, which is an Egyptian god. Sort of the underworld and dark and magic.
But their gods for the underworld or for the dark side of things weren't evil because there was no concept of evil. They were merely the mirror of the other things, and they were the secret things. And
Because Christianity came along, they perverted it all.
they all had functions which were just like reflections of, the metabolism and the mind and the emotions and so on.
Gateway to the unconscious and
They were much more interesting gods.
priests and that.
So, as that track was called Eden, And there was also in the Christian or the biblical mythology, Eden had a snake which was the one which knew about knowledge and created the sexual fall. And then the people got thrown out of Eden. Our version of Eden is that in fact we like the snake. And we think the snake wasn't such a bad guy because he gave people awareness of themselves.
That fits, you know, because I got it on the base of my spine because it's Kundalini, which is like there's is it tantric? It's like power.
What's
thing.
tantric?
Tantric yoga and tantric.
Indian sexual magic and
Oh.
well, there's loads of systems of yoga and tantrics based on sex, the power of the orgasm, really. And the power goes at the spine to your head.
Mm.
And releases consciousness or unconscious.
And that's supposed to be the sort of highest mental state you can have, sort of nirvana.
Mm.
So it ties in with the snake in Eden because that was knowledge, and it's the same sort of thing, really, released knowledge.
Right. And there's the story of Eden is in the book of Genesis as well. That makes it even nicer. But the sort of the Judaic religion, which then got kind of even more mutated and perverted by the Christian religion, is one of our big enemies, really, because they take knowledge and sexuality and higher mental states as something to destroy and suppress. So we try to celebrate them in that track and say Eden is actually a good place and that we still feel we are in Eden in the terms of our attitude. So we had him tattooed on the base of his spine with that sign so that we knew. Yeah. Right. So it's also like an anti-control symbol. And of course Mr. Sebastian does the tattoo, so that's nice, but also his voice is also the voice that we use for the spokesman. So we like to keep everything very kind of tight and interlinked always. So the voices are always done by Mr. Sebastian, which means that the two people who make up the spokesman never meet, and the spokesman himself does not exist as a person. And Mr. Sebastian, his speeches aren't written by him. He merely is the voice for them, and his speeches are written by a committee of us.
Who does them then?
Well, anyone can write them, that's one of the ideas, but normally they're done by people in PTV and the Temple at the moment. But it means that his attitudes can change, the spokesman, whenever we want, because he has no attitude. And he's like the ultimate politician or religious leader. You know, they actually have speeches written for them and opinions that are just not necessarily their own. But he in one sense, he's castrated in that he cannot become powerful outside our system because he doesn't exist. So he's completely useless. But on another level of paranoia, he's more frightening because he could live forever because he's only half an hour of film footage. And these pre-recorded, we always use the same. And you can just get Mr. Sebastian to record thousands of speeches saying anything you want. And he could go on when we were all dead, being re-edited by someone we never knew. And then gradually what he said could be changed. If you did really good editing, you could just use up all the words in different orders. If you spent long enough, making him say things that were never written or said as well. So he symbolises both, you know, like the ridiculous side of control and speeches and spokesman. I mean, you always have the Ministry of Defence spokesman, who you know is talking an official useless line. But he also symbolises the ultimate threat, the 1984 Big Brother who does not exist, you know, and therefore is control and is politics and opinion by committee. And nobody ever meets him because he's not there, but he appears to be and has all this power. Yeah, he'd have to burn the film, I guess.
Why have you got those pictures of, what's it called, Jim
Jones?
Yeah.
Where? Oh, in the manual?
Yeah.
Well, he's also on the new LP as well. I mean, do you know the story of Jim Jones at all?
No, I just, everyone knows about that.
He was...
Suicide, really.
Well, he started off when he was a child being quite strange and killing animals and then having burial services for them and beating up his friends if they wouldn't stand at the graveside while he did the sermon and everything. And he went on from there to become an actual minister, but that's not hard in America. And I mean,
No.
well, you can just buy it for $5 or something. So he eventually ended up running the People's Temple, which was his church, which started out being, or appearing to be, a very good church in that he helped the very poor black people and the underprivileged, and he had amazing energy and so on. And then he moved to San Francisco in California and got more and more intense, and he used to have a pulpit with digital delays and space echoes and everything, so that when he did sermons he could press a foot pedal or a button and a key phrase would repeat itself, but it would be like a subliminal brainwashing thing, because they'd still be listening to what he was saying now, but one phrase would be coming at them as well, and they couldn't focus on both, so he was actually like doing all these real mind games on everyone all the time. And he used to do sort of phony healing as well, with chicken livers. Phony.
Oh, okay.
False. He used to get chicken livers and pretend to have brought cancers out of people's throats and things like that. And he just got more and more and more into the power trip until instead of preaching about God, he was preaching, I am God, and I am Almighty God, and until you are God like me, you cannot understand anything, and I could destroy everything, and I'm going to go into, what's that word he always uses? Essence? Principle. I will become principle, which is just like energy, You'll go back into pure energy. And he also got into taking loads of speed and smack and everything else to keep going because he was working so hard. And he was also incredibly sexually precocious, and he used to fuck all the men he could and all the women he could. And people that were naughty were punished. He had a punishment room where people... Yeah, and death and kill and everything on the walls. And he used to sort of have people beaten and so on, and then they had to say thank you, Dad, when they'd been punished enough. Our stickers that we always put up say thank you, Dad, Temple of Psychic Youth.
No.
And that's the first thing we ever did, was start putting them all over the tubes, you see. And nobody, of course, knew that thank you, Dad was actually rather a distasteful reference, you see. But again, a reference to ultimate control and people being suppressed or being so stupid as to follow a spokesman type person, only he was an incarnate spokesman, so therefore very dangerous because he was an actual person. And he got more and more and more paranoid and basically completely crazy. If there is such a thing as crazy, he was well. Yeah, he had all these diseases that were killing him as well. And he went really out to lunch. Really out to lunch. And they moved to Guyana because they said, which was probably to an extent true, but not for the reasons they thought, that the CIA were after them, because he was doing all these social security scams. Everyone had to get social security money, but he took it all, Right, so they were making masses of money. Everyone who joined had to give all their property to the church, sell their houses for the church. They used to work 20 hours a day. The children had to work all the time. Really. And of course some drop out, but the ones who stay are completely, they're so exhausted, they're completely suggestible. And in their food they even put drugs like Valium and that in the food, so they were all kind of zonked as well.
Did he have a really large following then?
Well, about quite a lot, yeah, quite a big, enough for people like Jimmy Carter and that to actually think that he had a big vote, that they used to go and try and make him their friend politically, because he could get all his followers to vote for one person. If he said vote for so-and-so for the council, they would all vote for them. So lots of politicians were really kind of buttering him up. He was put on the housing committee of San Francisco at one point and things like that, He really got well in. And then he got so loopy that they were getting worried about him, and a couple of newspapers were starting to check him out and ask questions. So they buggered off to Guyana and built this perfect commune. South Central America. Little. And they built their own commune village where the men and the women weren't allowed to sleep together, even the wives weren't allowed to sleep with their husbands, but he could have the pick of either. And if they didn't want him, they got drugged, so they didn't know what was happening. And he had armed guards, so if they wanted to leave, they couldn't, although they were always told they could. In reality, they couldn't, and they had boxes full of snakes that you were put in if you were naughty, and torture rooms where you were electrocuted on your balls or whatever, or your tits if you were naughty. And I mean, it got really over the top. And he used to give sermons for like 12 hours a day. He had this throne, and above it was a wooden sign, you know, the one in my office: those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it.
I think so.
It's downstairs.
I've heard that before.
And he got it from some book, and he put it hanging on this wooden sign over his throne, and he'd sit there with a microphone and all these loudspeakers throughout the place, and he'd just ramble and ramble and ramble, stoned out of his brain.
Like Hitler, because he's got such a powerful voice.
And these people were working in the fields trying to make this place a viable village, so they were exhausted. All night he used to keep them awake, talking. They weren't really ever allowed to sleep.
Well, they would have just collapsed.
They did. People did collapse. You know, I mean, it was just mad.
So how did
And they were all completely hysterical. I mean, they were in no fit state to make it.
The CIA were going to get them, and they all sort of had to say that they'd defend him and the principal with their lives. So they all sort of trained with guns,
And he used
also
to-
they'd kill for him.
And if they said that they weren't sure, or that they wouldn't sacrifice their children, then they were tortured and made to work even harder and so on, you know.
I mean, you've got this 24 hours a day, so
Yes.
in the end, I mean, they were there in Guyana, separated from any reality.
Drugged up in the food,
In the
starved
practically
after
in the middle of the jungle, so they couldn't go anywhere if they wanted to.
And there were no planes out, no roads out, you know.
Oh, well, the only thing to do is to commit suicide.
Right. So you imagine that, and also they were already the most fanatical Jim Jones lovers in the first place, so they were the most likely.
There was lots of blacks who didn't have much money, and to him he was a saviour because he took them away from all the troubles in sort of the slums in, you know, on the outskirts of wherever.
And there also always has been a strong kind of fanatical Christianity amongst certain areas of the black people.
Mm.
You know, the sort of gospel stuff and all
And they do things with live snakes. Like they handle poisonous rattlesnakes, not Jim Jones's followers, but gospel, and in the deep south they take strychnine
To prove that God will protect
them. Yeah, protect them and handle rattlesnakes. And they actually sort of, about 7 each sort of church, loads of people die every year just handling rattlesnakes.
Right.
And if they died,
But they've
it's
got
because they
enough
didn't have
to
enough
check.
faith.
No,
Oh.
it means that particular person didn't have faith in God, you see. He can't lose. You see. Look, Jim Jones just wound them up to the point where there was no option. I mean, they called the practices for suicide white nights. They'd all be having their like 3 hours sleep or whatever they were allowed, and then the sirens would go, and all the armed guards would come running in and say, "Come on, it's white nights, the CIA are coming, the CIA are coming," and they'd all be completely hysterical.
That's so
Be-
fun, isn't it?
And they'd think that the CIA were coming, and they'd all start drinking this orange juice, which was supposed to have cyanide in Kool-Aid, right? And then, of course, he'd say it was a practice. But when you've been doing that to them, and they're already totally exhausted, and they've, you know, under complete control, I mean, one day it's the real thing, but they don't know the difference anymore. There's no reality anymore.
But what, Jim Jones, he did it as well, didn't he?
He didn't take the poison. He got one of the guards to shoot him in the head because he didn't even have the guts to do that.
Oh.
But I mean, he had the guts to tell the guard to shoot him in the head, but he was already terminally ill. He was dying anyway. And
the parasites that they found
yeah.
in the autopsy.
And he knew he was going to die within about a year at the most anyway, So his ultimate monument would be this final proof of ultimate power over people, that you can make 800-900 people commit suicide with their children.
So interesting.
But why have you included him on your stuff?
Because we deal with control and the dangers of control and the structures and techniques of control.
And that's a very vivid example of control taken to an extreme and the stupidity of people, and that's why the phrase, those that do not remember the past but intend to repeat it, is very relevant to us and, to anybody.
Do you
And
say
what-
that in that song?
Well, if you get back to the spokesman, what in a sense we're saying is that charismatic leaders who want to have power like that, because they basically just get off on being able to control people, are one of the biggest dangers around. I mean, even Maggie Thatcher is a smaller version of it.
Well, what about you
And
then?
so our spokesman doesn't exist precisely because they shouldn't.
But you're trying
But
to...
he symbolises the techniques that are used. He's an ironic reminder, but to make sure he couldn't become real, he isn't real, you see. And that's why there is no doctrine in what we do. I mean, people say, what's the temple for, or what does it mean? And of course we say, well, nothing. How could it? Because that's what we're against.
But you look as if you are controlling all those, or trying to control those kids.
Why? What do we tell them to do?
Kind of that... I said this before, like, they're mostly teenagers, aren't they?
No, they're not.
You said they were. Well, you're going to get a lot of sort of unemployed boys who are...
Unemployed boy.
You know what I mean? Who are easily manipulated just because of the state of mind they'll be in.
Manipulated for what?
I'm not saying you do, but you could do.
If we wanted to do that, it would be, for argument's sake, it would be me on the screen saying what I wanted them to do in a much more direct way, so that they would like me, a real person, so that me, a real person, could then manipulate them. But that's not what we've done. We've done precisely the opposite. We've actually made a parody of that kind of structure to open up and reveal its weaknesses and its dangers, and to make sure people remain paranoid and aware of it.
It's a very subtle, but it's a very important difference. We're using the tools of control to decontrol. If you've read our booklet, there's things in that will say it better than we probably can on the spur of the moment.
But everything we say in any of the writings we do is saying to people, you've got to figure it out. We want you to be an individual. We don't want you to follow anybody. And the last booklet we did, we even said we should become redundant and irrelevant as soon as possible.
Yeah, that was what I was trying
We
to
are
say.
only here to share our experience with you in case it's useful. If you don't think it's useful, that's fine, forget it. And if you do think it's useful, make use of it for what you want. But don't come running to us expecting us to help or explain it, or, give you any answers or be a crutch. We're not there for that.
We've got the information that they want, but we're not going to sort of force feed them with anything.
No, we just share our experiences, our observations, and the information we've come across, on the off chance that as we found it useful, it might be useful to them. But we don't care if nobody gets in touch.
No, because I mean, it's like a kind of little religion. It looks as it
It may look like a little religion.
all the
But
rituals and everything.
If you're dealing with something like politics and religion, which are the main ways that people are controlled and suppressed, then it is far more interesting and effective to initially suggest a similar structure and then prove that that structure does not have to exist, and that the actual structure, the actual content of a religion and politics is the ideas and the leaders, not the trappings.
But
it's not what you wear, it's the ideas that you emulate and that you mimic.
a lot of those kids, though, they want to have you up there. They need people to kind of follow and...
Nobody needs anybody to follow. People need honest advice, and they need people around who will give them the information they would like to have, instead of saying you're not allowed to have that, you're not old enough, or it's illegal, or it's rude.
No, it's not the
You're not meant to be interested in sex, or you're not meant to be interested in how politics ruins everybody, or why religion ruins everybody. I mean, our enemies are religion and politics and control. Our whole lives have been dedicated to fighting that, and that's why we've always been on the edge and why people are still scared of us. And the other reason the authorities are scared of us is because they know we're the real thing and that we're not interested in being in charge of anybody. If we wanted to be, we're doing everything the wrong way.
They are just pointing.
If you want people to follow you, I mean, how boring to have a load of people who haven't got a mind of their own asking you to deal with their lives every day. I mean, I don't know about you, but I would find it incredibly tedious. I find it hard enough to find half a dozen people who are stimulating. But to have hundreds of people who are unstimulating on your back would be a miserable existence as far as I'm concerned, and prove nothing. I mean, who wants to be able to prove that they can make somebody who's emotionally and intellectually unstable commit suicide? I mean, that is just a waste of time. Or have to guide their lives every day and make, organise meals for them and build villages for them and give them sermons 12 hours a day. I mean, I can't think of anything more boring than that.
You said that
I mean,
you were discussed in the cabinet or something, didn't you?
Yeah, we were.
Tell me about
transmissions were.
That was one of our earlier incarnations. Yeah.
Have you got the video thing here?
Of the actual program they did on.
Don't you have some videos or something that people can buy?
Nobody can buy them. They're not for sale.
Oh, well, have you got any here anyway?
Yeah, we've got videos.
Have you got filming?
Oh, no, they're not on showable videos. They're on a really old format you can't watch. There's tennis.
Well, why were you discussed? Because they feel
We did
less
it.
assertive.
Yeah, that's why they open our mail. That's why they tap our phones. That's why they raid our houses looking for things. This house is raided about once a year by the police. They don't know what we are, see, because we don't add up. We have the trappings of being something, but the reality is that we're not that at all, and they know that better than a lot of other people. They can't decide what we are. Are we pornographers, or are we anarchists, or are we a weird religious sect? They don't know, and I think that's far more interesting when people cannot focus on what you are, because that way you're not a threat to those people, because there is nothing solid there, so there's nothing solid to hit them with, and at the same time there's nothing solid there to attack. So people have to keep thinking for themselves, which is the whole point.
You know this holophonic thing, the album, have you got a deal yet?
No, we haven't, because so far all the A&R men have said they think we're far too sinister.
It's the same thing, they can't categorise it, they can't see a
So
market.
they think it's not commercial then?
They may think it's commercial in certain aspects of it or some way, but it doesn't fit in with what they're, being told to buy up at the moment.
See, rock groups are supposed to want to wear nice clothes and have lots of silly teenagers adulating them.
That's an image, I mean, you can't...
What's wrong with having an image?
Well, I know that's what I mean, they should like that, they're always looking for strong images.
No, they're not. They're looking for strong images about nothing. Image
Or
without
images that
content.
have been tried and tested before.
They don't mind image if it has no real content. What they don't like is when the image is actually less than the content, and yet the image is strong. They turn around and they think, well, they look quite interesting, and then they talk to us, and basically we're more articulate, more aware than anyone who works in their company. We're also not interested in them making us rich and famous. We're not interested in how many records we sell.
Well,
We're interested in what is on.
Manipulated in the way they manipulate the other groups.
We do it.
We're wise to it all.
We do it for genuinely altruistic reasons. We like
Plus
to.
It's interesting. But,
It's interesting for us, and it's stimulating for us to have a challenge and try and find out if we can do something with it. We start off with a blank tape and we think, what can we talk about? How can we construct it?
and how can we do something new for us and for other people?
But we're not bothered. I mean, anyone with any intelligence knows that the number of copies a record sell does not prove if it's any good. I mean, all Yeovil song sold an awful lot of records, does that mean that it's better than a Doors single that didn't get in the top 20, or that it's better than what we've done or a load of other people have done? Of course it doesn't. Or, you know, the Human League selling millions and millions of records does not necessarily mean that the lyrics of their song are very important or useful to anybody. We want to do music as propaganda. But as useful to people. I mean, I don't, once the tape is finished, it's finished. We've proved that we can build that particular tape, and we hope that the content and the ideas we wanted are on it. But how many it sells is basically an academic question. It should only sell as many as people there are out there who are interested in it. There's always going to be a few who buy it for the wrong reasons, but that's true of any record anyway. But we would hope that the people who buy ours buy it because they want to be stimulated. They want something which is more of a challenge, and they want life to be more interesting than it was before. They don't want the predictable, obvious, insipid stuff. They want something which can be a surprise, which can be listened to in 2 years and they don't understand everything about it for a long time. Or they can be talking to somebody else and that person suddenly says, "Did you know that the people singing in Latin are actually singing part of Krafft Ebing's Psychopathia Sexualis? It's not actually religious at all. It's actually about a 70-year-old nymphomaniac who was obsessed with molesting young boys and masturbating them," which is actually what it is. And it's done that way because it's an attack on the Catholic Church. And in fact, most of this LP is an attack on, a direct attack on religions and religious cults and cult leaders and politicians. And that's why it's dealing with the extreme cases. There's a Charles Manson song on there. And there's
What's that?
Always is Always Forever, sung by a castrati. You know, the people who have their balls off so they can sing high. In the same room at Caxton Hall, well, by various means, and at Caxton Hall it was recorded in the same room where Aleister Crowley did The Rites of Eleusis, which was about the only real public performance of traditional magic, which alluded to sexual magic.
He actually gave laudanum, was it?
Yeah, everyone had to take liquid opium before they watched the rites. And Victor Newberg used to dance himself into an ecstatic trance and then collapse. And well, he was the partner that Crowley used for homosexual sex magic in Paris.
Oh, I don't know anything about Crowley.
Right? But later on that side, just before the person is buried, because the way all these cults lead to is your own destruction and death and a completely wasted life, right? If you want basic symbolism. The words spoken immediately before the coffin lid goes on are from a seance done by one of Victor Newberg's relatives, and it's the only time that he came through to a medium and left a message, and that is the exact message that he left after he was dead through a medium who was related to him. Now, whether or not you believe in why mediums get messages is irrelevant to us. The fact is, it's another connection. The whole LP is interconnected very carefully, and it's all about different types of faith and dogma. And our whole point is that any type of dogma is bad for you. Any fixed position. He's not a hero. Why is he a hero? Has anybody ever said he's a hero?
Well, he travelled all the way to America to see him.
We're very interested in trying to get accurate information and understand phenomena which appear to be quite important. The same way that journalists would travel a long way to interview Margaret Thatcher if they happened to be a political journalist.
You read the transcript of Charles, what he said in court, you'd realise how important he is. He came up with, you know, like he was just like a mass murderer to the people of America, and he said some incredibly interesting things about control and exactly what we're saying.
But he also used drugs and exhaustion and sex to control people. And it's very important to know your enemy. The only good biblical quote there is, more or less, is "Know thine enemy." And everyone does it. Anyone who worth their salt finds out what they're attacking and how it works and the structures of it and the people who are best at doing it and where they go wrong and where they go right and how to stop them and short-circuit it. And the only way to know about it is to go into it and find out and examine it.
Fear of snakes are taught how to handle them and to know them, and once you know and handle them and get used to them, you know how to control them and you're not afraid of them anymore.
Fear is the big controller, right? And if you refuse to face things and investigate them, fear and ignorance are the things that destroy and control this planet. That's why we're on a planet of morons instead of geniuses.
I think Charles Manson is a genius, though.
He's not.
It's a double,
He's not. He's
sided thing.
He's not. On certain things he says are moronic and nasty.
He says absolutely mental things sometimes.
And then he also has moments of great inspiration. He's a naive, or a primitive. He's interesting. I wouldn't say he was a genius, but he's very interesting.
He's mad, and I don't think he is at all.
Oh no, I don't think he's mad. I think he's somewhat unbalanced sometimes.
Oh, he's an acid casualty. He rambles. Maybe he can't communicate, but...
But, it's like everything else. Suppose, for argument's sake, you took someone like Adolf Hitler. Now, suppose that 99% of what he said was bullshit, but he said one thing once that was really useful to everybody and really sensible. Why dismiss that one thing and not make good use of it for the betterment of mankind just because the rest of what he said was quite obviously crap? I mean, this is the whole problem with our society, and that attitude that something is either good or bad, not sometimes good and sometimes bad, or useful as an example, although it was bad, or irrelevant, although it was good. That comes from the moral Puritan attitude of religion. And that attitude also permeates the politicians of this country. Don't forget, the voting system in this country was invented hundreds of years ago. It has no relation to the society we have now at all. And that's why it's so screwed up. And the people who are in charge of it are still Victorians. Margaret Thatcher's a fucking Victorian.
They've got it in their power, so they keep it like it is.
And they have a vested interest in perpetuating a useless, evil system which relies on keeping everyone else as stupid and passive and lethargic as possible. It makes you feel guilty about sex, guilty about ambition, guilty about being ignorant. It makes you feel that you need them because they know better, like mummy and daddy.
State of mind you can have. I mean, control of drugs and things is so we can't fiddle about with our consciousness.
I mean,
if they go that far.
The reason that LSD is cracked down upon far harder than heroin is because LSD stimulates the brain, and in many cases does, through just using it once, change somebody forever and their perception of the world. It doesn't make them learn something that they didn't know, but it makes what they really suspected very clear.
You just sort of change.
Like, if you thought people around you were probably arseholes, when you take acid and you go on the tube, you know they're arseholes, and you never forget that you knew they were arseholes. And that kind of drug is highly dangerous to the kind of people we're after, right? Margaret Thatcher doesn't want intelligent thinking individuals in this country because they're not going to vote for her, no way. She wants people who think that they need a big mummy figure who knows best and can solve everything for them and is strong and tells them off and smacks their bum but changes their nappy and feeds them. That's what she's done. She's turned this country into 8-month-old babies.
You saying that, it's like God. I mean, the Christian thing of God is paternal. He's guarding over you. It's all right at the end of it. God will look after you, and that takes away the individual's responsibility, which is absolutely crazy.
Right, you don't need to make anything of your life here because that's all God's will, and there's no, the rulers are God's chosen ones, and God will reward you anyway as long as you don't moan. So, you stay nice and placid that way. I mean, Christianity was basically invented by the nobility to keep the serfs where they wanted them, so they'd work. I mean, Christianity is the most corrupt, disgusting, evil, filthy thought that has ever been perpetrated on this planet. And as soon as we get rid of all these born-again Christians, we'll be a hell of a lot better off. And not just the Christians, but any dogmatic religion. The Muslim religion is equally as fucked up and corrupt and insane, you know. Any religion that circumcises 80 million women is, to my mind, corrupt and disgusting and should be eradicated. In fact, a religion is basically a system of thought that you inherit and agree with, and that in itself, to me, is terrible. An anathema, they call it, don't they? I mean, anything which says that you should go out and agree with something else, to me, is the enemy, you know. I mean, we don't. I mean, we don't. You fight it.
Indoctrinated from the beginning.
Well, of course, it goes right back to when you're. Yeah, you know. I mean, to start beginning to cure it in the long term, you've got to eradicate the education system we've got, because that is built to start creating clones who do not think. Right. You know, you have. It's really hard to not have to go to the assembly and sing hymns. You know.
I didn't.
It's not easy in a lot of schools, though. You get a lot of flack.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't go to them.
No, but you know, I mean, it's still the accepted norm in England is that kids go to assembly and sing hymns, and why shouldn't they, and so on.
I went to boarding school and I refused to go to church and sing the hymns, and I got real shit. Like, I almost got expelled just for refusing to do that.
Do you know?
Because they didn't know why.
Do you know what I did though? I did the opposite. I started out rebelling against it, and then I suddenly sussed a much more interesting method. So I then volunteered to be the secretary of the Christian discussion circle, and I was made that because nobody else wanted to be, because nobody really liked it. So I was then in charge of it, and I also became a Sunday school teacher for a year, because I thought it was the best way to find out what they're doing.
I don't believe you.
It's true.
It is.
And what did
I've got a school magazine downstairs which actually has the bit I wrote at the end of the year after I was Christian Discussion Circle secretary.
Did they suspect? I mean, how did you...
They didn't suspect initially, but when the first speaker I got for the Christian Society was a Communist Party headquarters spokesman, and the second one was a Hindu, and the third one was into the occult, they started to think that I was doing something else. So I said, no, I'm doing comparative religion. But in the meantime, I was beginning to open up the thing that there were A, alternative ways of thinking, and B, that each of them in its way is equally as ridiculous. You know, what you do is you take common sense wherever you find it, and then if it's useful to you, then you use it. If it's not useful, you discard it. If it's useful for 6 months, you use it. When it becomes irrelevant to your life because you change, grow up, alter, then you throw it away. There shouldn't be anything fixed. The universe, everyone knows, is in a perpetual state of flux and change.
Chaos.
You know, any rules science makes, it knows later on it's going to have to throw away when it finds out more. And yet people don't try and behave that way. They try and impose a system of rules which they know are impossible on their behaviour and society and thought. So they're bound to go wrong from the beginning, because it's impossible. They always say every individual is different. Every individual should have different ideas, emotions, etc. Then they try and make up sets of rules to control them and have answers, you know. It's insane. So what you've got to do is you've got to learn to be pragmatic and to work day to day on what is effective, what is useful, what is constructive. Always think about it, always check out what the structure is. Never ever accept anything without asking why. Never accept anything without asking why.
You're trying to make all your psychic youth, whatever they are, realise...
We want to make them bloody nuisances to everyone else, but satisfied in themselves more than they ever were before. Obviously different people will go different distances. Some will be interested for a while and discard it. That's part of what we're saying. Some will get really into it and never meet us, because they'll just develop their own mythology, their own system, merely triggered by bumping into something we've done, right? That's fine too. We don't ever have to meet anyone, talk to them, correspond with them. They may... I mean, this happens anyway. We noticed it happen. People would suddenly say, oh, after I listened to second annual report, it changed my life. And then you meet them 8 years later and you sort of say, but that's...
said that.
Yeah.
Why?
Because it just fitted in exactly, and it made me realise that I didn't have to do what I was told at boarding school, or just that I wasn't really sort of mental. It's just that I thought differently.
Oh, so you were a psychic youth that's now part of...
Well, he was a TG fan.
I was a TG fan, yeah.
Oh.
And then he did
Have you got a lot
a
of
magazine
people
of
who
his
are
own.
in Bristol have carried on?
Quite a lot.
Yeah, because TG to a certain extent did the same thing. They attracted people who were individuals and who thought for themselves.
Only now we've tried to up the stakes. We've come much more up front. Now we're actually going right out in the open and saying it much more directly than we ever did before. It was implied by what we produced. Right? I mean, if you listen to Second Annual Report, nowhere on it does it say you should do this or think that, or you're not peculiar, or
but then again, it came at such a time.
The first LP we did, but it implies, by dealing with subject matter not normally dealt with on a record, and in a style which at that time was completely the opposite of everything else that was going on. It says, don't be afraid of being the odd one out. Don't be afraid of thinking things that people don't normally say you should think about. Don't be afraid of reading books that you've been told are naughty books. You know, don't be afraid of saying you're interested in sex, or you find the fact that people commit murders is strange. Just accept the world is an amazingly peculiar place, investigate it, and try and learn from it.
You put lots of emphasis on sex though, don't you?
Certainly.
Why?
Sexuality is very, very important.
Because you think it's really powerful.
Apart from the fact that we feel that we've observed that it is very powerful.
Sex and death are so deeply rooted in people's minds from every aspect of life. It's not always obvious, but deep down they're the most important and basic instincts.
They are also the global ones. You could go to a guy in New Guinea and he knows what sex is and he knows what death is. You can go to anyone anywhere in the world and they know what sex and death are, and all of them have a very strong interest in it. Everywhere. So it's the closest to a universal language. That's one reason, right? The second is that it's also the thing that every society, no matter how primitive, as soon as it has any form of social pyramid, right, where there are people who are at the top who are the leaders, and then there are various stages down to the plebs. As soon as you get that on any scale, even a family is like that, yeah? They make rules about sex. Right? Or were, which was incest is probably a bad thing because it weakens the strain. But in days of contraception, that argument actually, in terms of biology, has gone. That's not to say that by saying that I'm saying people should go out and commit incest. To logically analyse something or be interested in it as a phenomena does not mean you approve of it. If it did, it means that every TV programme that mentions war is saying war is good, that every TV programme that mentions cancer is saying cancer is good, or that every newspaper that mentions a murder or a rape is saying that murder and rape are good. They're not accused of agreeing with it because they mention it, and yet why, whenever we mention it, are we accused of thereby saying we agree with it? We've never said that, but that's what's always thrown at us. Now, why is that?
Just because
I mean, it's so
sinister, they always assume.
But they think we're sinister because we actually deal with those subjects. Nothing we've done, just the fact we deal with. But journalists deal with them all the time. TV deals with them all the time. And I think they're actually more sinister because they have a vested interest in persuading us to have a particular opinion. We always try and have no opinion.
Which makes us even more
we don't say
open to it in a way.
We don't say we approve of it, but we also don't say that it's not interesting.
What's the nursery for?
Well, we haven't finished the other subject yet. Sexuality. Right? So, every society makes rules about sex. Why would they do that, do you think? Why would they think it's so important, even on a banal level, to not allow people in Britain of any age to have certain material showing photos of certain sex acts? Why are we not allowed to do what we want, read what we want, say what we want? Why can't we make a video of what we want, even in private? What right? Precisely, so sex is linked to control. as well.
Wow.
Well, it does link. We have a very logical position. It all interlinks, doesn't it? Right? Now, sexuality is dealt with because obviously it's used to control us. And because when you're in a moment of orgasm, you are, if you like, disconnected from the normal everyday world. For a moment at least, your brain is like liberated and somewhere else, a special, very special, and addictive experience, which is why people like to have lots of sex and lots of orgasms if they can. It's a very pleasurable thing, and it makes you feel good, and it relaxes you, and so on. Now, that in itself is a threat, because people who are content are a threat, and there is power in it, and it has rules to control it. Because now what we thought was, if they're so interested everywhere in controlling sexuality, they must think it contains a strong threat. Therefore we should investigate it, find out what it does, what our boundaries are. What do we find suddenly without knowing we've been conditioned to think we should not do or cannot do or is odd?
Why wanking makes you go blind and spotty?
Have people that still believe in
They
that?
do, I've met them. People who think they're liberated bohemians and they smoke dope, go and see groups, live with a boyfriend, and they won't masturbate because they think it's dirty.
Oh, I don't believe that.
I can tell you their names, but I won't because it would embarrass them, but it's true.
How do you find that out? If they were like that, they wouldn't even
They
talk
do.
about it
Well,
to
because
you.
we have a very persuasive way of discussing it.
If you go up
And often they tell you because they don't think it's odd. That's the other thing, which is even weirder. People will turn around and say, I never ever wank.
They're just
Boys too.
embarrassed with
No, they're
it.
not. No. Oh no, you're wrong. This is
Well,
what
they
you're up
do.
against.
I mean,
No, I mean, this is what we're up against. We're up against a society where apparently rebellious, free-thinking young people, I'm not saying a mass of them, but more than you would ever expect, are incredibly inhibited and fucked up.
just because they wear anarchy t-shirts and things, they're just inside their
So many people are not sexual.
Anyone else.
When you are sexual, it's really hard to understand how anybody couldn't be. That's the other problem. I mean, those are the ones who freak me out more than anyone else. You know, I mean, I expect certain types of adult or older person or whatever, or social status type person to have Puritan or moralistic or righteous attitudes. But people who look and sound like you or me.
Just repressing it, it's still there.
Well, everybody's sexual. This is what we're saying, and we think that, in fact, that until you cure the sexuality, which causes so many neuroses and guilt, you can't go on to deal with the other stuff.
But it's quite a hard one to deal with. Just
of course it is. So we've tried to evolve. You mentioned rituals earlier. The only ritual we've done is one which suggests ways that people might find that they can start facing up to their repressed sexuality and learning to enjoy it and live with it and realise that, you know, they can think as they want. They don't have to even do everything they think of, just realise they can think about it.
It's also the important concept that the orgasm can somehow influence on a magical level.
Oh, what's that?
That is,
Well, through our observation, it appeared to us that by initiating an orgasm, masturbating or intercourse or whatever, if at the time you were doing it, it was done with a particular intention or true desire in mind, that the thing that you wanted to happen tended to happen far more often than was statistically likely. Now this can only be proved by trying it out. Right? And we don't mind if nobody else believes us, because we're quite happy that we found that for us it works, and maybe it doesn't work for anyone else.
if they don't believe it, then it probably won't.
But if on the other hand it is useful to other people and they find it does work too, then why shouldn't they know about it?
So
The irony being that we have found that of about 70 or 80 people who've tried it seriously to some degree, at least half have said that they've been almost unnerved by the speed and exactness with which what they wanted to happen happened.
Well, what do they want to happen?
Well, often it's
all sorts of things.
So they can wank and sort of, or like while they're fucking think about, I don't know, having a new car and they'll get.
well, they could, but it would be. It's not that simple.
Well, I know
Nothing
that's
ever
an
is.
example, but
If they truly were obsessed with getting a new car, and it wasn't just a whimsical, I'd like a new car, because we'd all like a new car or a car, right? Then it would.
It doesn't work on sort of
There's no-
level, like I'll have a wank and I want a shower of roses to appear.
to kind of what people want with relationships.
Well, most people tend to use it more for relationships. And
It
some...
It sort of reveals what you really want, because the orgasm's such an important thing. It somehow just distills what you've been thinking and focuses the will. I mean, that's what we use it for, as a focus of the will, which sort of helps. Say you wanted to do well in your exams, you'd use the orgasm towards that aim, and on some level it helps because you instill self-confidence in yourself. I mean,
you lodge it into your unconscious, because at the moment of orgasm your unconscious comes through to the conscious. They're joined. That's what an orgasm is. And it means that what you really want, a true desire, is lodged in there like an obsession. But you've got to be practical too. You've got to actually make practical steps to get it as well, like on a day-to-day basis. Like if it's somebody that you really fancied and you've never met, and then you finally meet them because you've done a sigil, you still got to chat them up. You can't expect them to suddenly leap onto the floor of the cafe, take off their clothes and say, fuck me. You know, you've got to say hello and would you like another cup of tea or whatever, and take them home, etc. But it can make them actually appear in the right place at the right time, so you have that opportunity. Now that has happened to nearly everybody.
And really uncanny that was.
Oh, I don't think I could do that. I can never think about anyone I actually know.
Well, then you have a right, well then you think of the kind of person that you've always wanted to meet and haven't.
No, I was fantasise about things that really I would never do, like
That
people I
snake's
can't
just...
stand.
Is that the snake that's just got out? Yeah. I thought I saw something fall out. That's good. Naughty boy.
You're going to lose him. He's getting the prize.
I don't think it is actually a magical thing in the way people mean. My theory is that everybody has the potential in their brain, in the bits that people don't know what it does, whatever it is, 2/3 or 7/10 or something, to do things which aren't commonplace at the moment. And whether they used to work more in the old days, and that's why you get stories of magicians and so on, right, all these legends about all sorts of things, and priests being able to learn disciplines that made them have amazing powers and telepathy, and that our society being so horribly Christian and Puritan and Victorian, and the industrial society being so sort of banal, has just let those abilities atrophy and never encouraged them, and in fact tends to be very sceptical and ridicule any thought about them, very effectively too. I think they're actually a physical function of the brain, a neurological function. I don't think there's anything mysterious about them at all. I certainly don't believe in external powers. You know, I think we've had enough external powers to last us another 10,000 years, thanks to all these philosophies and religions and so on. And I think people should go back to themselves and think that all the power they need is in themselves, both sexual and mental. And I think the reason it works at all, if it does have an actual effect apart from merely making you concentrate more on what you really want, which is its main purpose, that it just really makes you focus on what you actually want and remind yourself, because you sort of just think about it more.
Is that what that song Of Power is about?
Right, because of is sexual secretion and orgasm.
What, Japanese or something?
Greek, ancient Greek.
Oh, I did classical Greek at school. I didn't learn the word of.
No, you probably...
Ovation. Ovum.
Oh, Oh, yeah.
Oh, there is. Oh,
So, I think, you know, and that's why you get the odd person who is apparently telepathic or whatever. They just happen by accident or whatever. You know, a few extra synapses trigger more often. So they demonstrate the little bits in the brain that the little electrical charges zip across. So they've just got a few more buzzing away in a bit that we don't normally use than more of it. So they get the phenomena more often, so it becomes more noticeable. But everybody has experience of knowing who's going to ring them up, or expecting a letter and the next day it turns up, or feeling like, you know, precognition that it's happened before, or lots and lots of people say they know somebody's died, like an auntie or a mother or something, before they're told. I mean, does you... Oh. How nice of him. Your bum's still open, Cleanser. Dirty git. Probably waiting to build up a new lot of smell, isn't he?
Oh, there you go.
He's had a poo. What? Oh, I couldn't snake's bum. He's had a shit. The snake's had a fucking shit. Yeah. Well, at least he's closed it up now.
That's all you opened it for.
A poo-poo. Dirty bastard. Probably spunk. You probably heard of power and went with the spunk. Where are we? The nurseries.
It's on.
Yes, it is. Oh, you want it on? No, it's running round, darling. Where are we? What do you want to know? What the nurseries are?
Yeah, and what's in it? And I'll have a look.
Well,
I can't remember how well. There was that chair.
Dentist chair.
And what's
Which is quite an early one. What is it? About Edwardian or something.
Really nice one.
And that one, the one I've got, belonged to a dentist in Hull in Yorkshire who was sent to jail for about 7 years for raping women patients under gas while they were on that particular dentist chair.
Oh.
And he put an extension on the end where your feet go, a padded extension, so that he wouldn't damage his shins while he was kind of lying across. So it's got a good history, or a bad one. I'm sure all the a notorious history is the best way of putting it, yes. Rather than a good one. Good implies that I agree with it, which I didn't, of course. A notorious history, but a sexual history, which makes it more interesting, obviously. And I've got a real coffin.
What about the lampshade, though?
What, the skin lampshade?
Yeah, where did you get that from?
That was a present.
But is it, I'm not, it's got to be from sort of Nazi time, isn't it? I can't imagine.
No, it's very recent. Last week. You know that sore bum you've been complaining of, Peter?
How do you know?
It's real human hair, but it's not real human skin.
Oh, you're having me on. I believe
We were
you.
winding
I put
It's-
nothing past.
It's a latex cast of real human skin.
Oh.
Because the girl over the road, Helen Chadwick, is a kind of more traditional artist, and she used to do a lot of things to do with skin, women wearing their own skin, and so on. And she made that lampshade, and I just really liked it because it was kind of kitsch, you know. It's sort of a kitsch joke, the sort of skin lampshade. And it's actually her body and tits and her hair, but the skin's latex, but it's kind of gone hard and it looks really good.
It looks like, right, it's hard to imagine.
I would never have a real skin lampshade, even if I was offered one, because I disapprove, believe it or not. Each of us has our personal morality, but I think it should be a personal one that one invents and evolves for yourself, really.
And what's the nursery for?
Well, a nursery is somewhere where
Say why you called it the nursery.
Well, I'm going to. I was about to, in fact.
Oh.
But I got interrupted again by Blondie. I was told that calling you Fifi was a big privilege, so I stopped.
Oh no, it's just that
I didn't even know anyone else called you Fifi. I don't know where it came from.
well, I suppose everybody just.
Do they?
Hmm.
I know other people call Fiona. I've never ever called any Fifi.
I don't let people, like any special people, can call me because
Well,
it sounds silly coming from me.
well, I
Quite
decided
like
that.
it, though.
I decided when I realised it actually had some kind of conscious. There was a conscious thought about it on your part. I stopped using it
Oh.
because I thought it's not fair
Oh,
to
I don't
presume.
mind. I just get paranoid because I think that, they're taking the piss out of me.
So it used to be called the Pussy Room, my room, because the door had what, about 900 pussies, i.e. ladies' genitals, all over it. So from one distance,
Painted or photographed?
photos
Real photographs from magazines?
from lots and lots of crummy
Real
photos from porno mags. Yeah.
Mm.
The dustbin men used to go mad because they used to find all these porno mags in the dustbin and think, great, and open them, and all the bits they wanted had all been snipped out. There were all these little squares where they were missing. They must have thought I was a real pervert.
I just think it looks like really kind of gynecological.
It didn't, though. When there was hundreds of them, they're all quite small. It looked like marble, and lots of people could walk past it loads of times and not even know what it was, which is what I liked about it.
Yeah.
That it was very abstract.
Well, you should have kept it.
Well, it was there for years, and then it got too well known. Once people did pick up on it, they kind of started to tell people before they came, oh, you must see the door. And that turned it as if it was something for people to look at, which it wasn't. It was the opposite. It was for people to miss in a kind of funny way.
It used to be coloured as all in the door.
And so I had to paint it all out. If you look at the grey paint there now, you can see all the little squares where they were, because I painted over it. But other people spoilt it, you see.
One day
They made it seem like something that was for other people's benefit instead of just something that was done, as a throwaway. Because I did it when I was living on my own and I was bored stiff, and I used to go down at 1 in the morning and stick another 20 or 30 on until I got sort of tired and then go to bed. And it was one of those things you start doing and it takes ages to do, but you just keep going till it's finished,
So then you call it the nursery?
The nursery. Because it occurred to us in a way it was a much better name, because the nursery, especially for what we're doing with the new LP, it became more appropriate. It was less specific, like the pussy room. There was only one pussy room because there was only one pussy door, whereas a nursery, everyone could have a nursery theoretically. And it's where children go and play with all their toys. So if you think in terms of a playroom, but for more adult, fetishistic or sexual fun, then it's a room where people go to play sexually, but where, if they think of it in the right way, there are no guilt rules and there are no forbidden laws. Like, say you are a couple in the pussy room or the nursery as it is now, you can do things, perhaps with someone else, that if you did in the rest of the house, they would cause jealousy or confusion. But in that room is a separate world where, if you like, everything that happens is a dream, and it doesn't spill out. And it's funny, but it never has. People who we know, friends who've used the nursery for themselves, have said that they really enjoy it because it has this atmosphere that you can do what you want, and it's what you do stays in the room. It doesn't follow you outside because it's such a specific room.
Yeah, because that's the only reason you don't.
Yeah, it's a functional room only, which is really useful. And a lot of them, I mean, they go in with a girl might go in, a lot of them, they go in with their girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever. But they tend to go further and experiment more because it's a room which sort of, it feels that that's the only reason to be there. And they have a really good time. And they always say, oh, that was really good, I enjoyed that. At first they kind of think, well, what can I do, But it doesn't matter. I mean, if they sit and talk, it doesn't matter. But they don't usually, of course. And the coffin was left over from the last album, from when we did the burial thing, so I just kept it. It's been useful. It's really nice when you're inside
Do you have the lid put on?
have the lid on, It's really peaceful, and there's no light, which is a really nice sensation when you open your eyes and there's no light
But
at all.
isn't it like a sensory deprivation?
I thought it would be, because I'm a bit claustrophobic, but it didn't affect me that way at all. I found it really relaxing, and I wanted to go to sleep straight away, and wank at the same time. I opted for wanking in the end, and had a really good wank.
But what if somebody...
But then there were 2 people on the lid doing naughty things, and all I could hear the noises, and I was sort of imagining what they were doing really vividly, and listening to the noise of their breathing, and you know how you kind of relate what your breathing is like when you're doing certain things. You try and figure out, oh, they must be actually, you know, doing fucking or fingering or licking or something at this particular moment, and usually you're completely wrong, because we were making a video at the same time, and I was completely out in what I thought was happening. I was really over-exaggerating, but it was good, because it was really exciting, because you kind of think of all these things happening on the coffin lid, and you're in there. It's all very unreal, but it was nice. And nurseries are also where you can grow exotic strains of plants and so on, like orchids and fruit, which wouldn't grow in a normal garden. So it has that implication of developing or encouraging people to become more individual and less inhibited and more special in themselves for themselves, if they have a nursery of their own. And of course, ideally, I don't think it would be such a bad idea if every house in Britain had a nursery built in.
That's a good idea.
And the nursery wouldn't be kitted out in advance, it would be a room which was for that function, but which each family or couple or person designed and developed as they went along according to what they found they liked. Some might be completely bare, some might be very sort of traditional and corny, and some could be very obscure, you know.
There's no reason why it's really strange it hasn't happened actually. It should be a really natural thing. Things children
It's because
have
people are trained to think in such straightforward terms that none of us realise how conditioned we are. Me too. You know, sex is something that you do in certain situations and in certain ways. Even, you know, now it's really hard. So to have a room which is only a sexual room or a fantasy room, it might not always be sexual, but just a special room where you only go in it to do something quite consciously, but to explore yourself and your responses and so on, means that once you're in there, you tend to do that, which is very healthy.
Why have you all got these cots?
What, the inner circle?
What do you mean?
We call it the inner circle. It's a joke on all these secret societies, you know, because it's actually a ring. Most secret societies have an inner circle, you see.
Oh, yeah.
So we just called it that because it was a funny pun.
Because it improves the orgasm. One certain type, Prince Albert, actually improves an orgasm, because I think it must go through some sort of nerve, sort of bulb. There's like a bulb of nerves just at the base of the glands, and that's where it goes through. And it also sort of stops your spunk coming up.
Quite as quickly.
Yeah, and it sort of builds up and then comes through, and that's a pleasurable thing. But it really improves.
The bottom hole though, because it does leave marks sometimes.
What, spunk?
Yeah,
Oh.
it does.
Then he needs a fatter ring. You can get fatter rings. I've got a fatter ring now, and you have.
Oh, let's look.
Show me yours.
Do you know what? I've only got one in at the
Have you got the fat one in?
Yeah.
You would, if you were a boy.
But the ball of the other one went down the thing.
See, that's the fatter one. Yes, it is.
That's what Mark's got.
No, his is thinner than that.
It's not.
It will be, I bet you.
Um,
Because he always puts the same type in the first time. You have to actually go back and request these.
oh, because he said that Sleazy had a thinner one than his.
No, he had a smaller one, because Mark's got a bigger.
It's just the sort of diameter of the head.
Oh.
Anyway, you can get a fatter one.
You know the one that Paula's got? I'll get her to show me. How thick is that?
Well, the ones in her lips are bigger than the ones in her clit, because the clit's only tiny, isn't it? So it has to be quite thin, but because the clit is proportionately tinier, it's still as radical. You see what I mean? Well, Sleazy got the first one.
He got his foreskin done first.
He got his foreskin done first, just for decorative reasons, and then he got his Prince Albert.
He got two in his foreskin and then Prince Albert.
And he just started raving about how much better it was.
It really is.
And I eventually thought, I can't miss out on this. I'm happy with the orgasms I've always been having, but if somebody tells me that I can make them a lot better, then obviously why not? Plus, it began to appeal to me. The more I thought about it, the more special and interesting it seemed, because it was another taboo, another kind of conditioned thing you just don't consider doing, you know.
Sticking bits of metal in your willy.
Why not when you stick them in?
Well, I know, precisely. When you think of it logically, you think, well, why not? And once I got to the state of, well, why not, and I would like it, then I got it done. But I didn't just do it for the sake.
Really nice as well.
I think it's great.
Yeah. It took me a year to get to the point where I was sincerely just interested in having it done and not thinking, oh, I ought to get it done because that's weird or something. You know, I actually just thought, I like the way it looks better than without the cot. I think it's great because it's functional, and why not anyway, you know? What possible reason is there not to? And it just, the only reason we've all got them is because we're all close-knit and work together and so on. And inevitably, the enthusiasm's rubbed off on each other. So most of the people who...
To a lot of other people.
And a lot of people who are much more acquaintances, like Mark and B and...
Has he got one?
B, yeah. He's got his nipples done now, to so much. And Dave Tibet. And...
Has he got his card?
Quite a few more. John Gosling.
Who's he?
He's in a group called Ake, but he's quite a close acquaintance.
I should think has a clip pierced.
No, it was labia, it turned out. Two of his girlfriends then got their labia pierced, and it just spreads. The thing is, once like one of a group of people gets it done, if you like, takes the plunge and realises it's not such a big deal to do it, and it is good, then often you find a lot of their friends come across and think, yeah, why not? So you get kind of one, and then about 3 or 4 others, and then...
Once you get the information that it exists and certain types can be good for you, you know.
Again, it's nice that Mr. Sebastian also does it, and he's also the spokesman's voice, and it all becomes... It's just like, you know, it's just a nice ritual experience. It's really nice going there, because he's such a nice bloke, Mr. Sebastian. He's really relaxing, and it's a very... It's like... Every now and then it's nice in your life to have a very special experience, and...
How much does it cost?
And the ring's £8 and it's 5 or 6 for the actual piercing.
It's about £14-15, I think.
But you can get solid gold ones as well.
Isn't surgical steel better?
Yeah.
I prefer surgical steel. And gold's softer as well. Look at that. I've got an amplang as well, you know, the rod that goes right through.
No.
It's
I
just a
don't know
rod.
what it looks like. I remember
It's a steel rod that goes right through with the ball on each end. And that is... It's not as exciting as the PA, as it is. Are you alright?
Yeah.
Hello, darling. And nipples, they're on men anyway, they're usually atrophied, so if you get your nipples pierced, it tends to make them not working, useless. Seems to be. It re-stimulates them so that, you know, most men's nipples aren't very sensitive. It tends to make them sensitive again.
It's wild if you touch his nipples.
Really?
He really gets off on it, and I can't stand it. I've never met anyone like that.
I know someone who does that.
Some people do.
Tom does that. Put that in the face. Tom Craig likes his nipples.
Who's Tom Craig?
Some mentis girl.
So, basically, we're really only interested in functional piercings. And naturally, if we're interested in orgasms and the power of orgasms, then functional piercings, which sort of affect that, are obviously of interest to us. But I must admit, on a purely special and decorative level, I like it as well.
Aesthetically pleasing.
You know, the fact that you've not got records, are you worried about it?
No. What were you going to say?
Well, I mean, what are you going to do about it? If you had, you know, like, has anyone sort of been making any offers?
Yeah, there've
Like
been...
WEA?
Oh, well, we didn't want to be with WEA. That was one of the reasons that we're trying to get another deal.
Does Steve
there've
do
been
the
a couple...
negotiating?
Yeah, Steve-O does everything for that side of it. He fronts the money in advance out of his own money for us to record the tape, and he leaves us completely alone until it's completely finished. He never asks us or tells us what it should be like or anything, and when it's the last day we ring him up and say, now you can come and hear it now, it's finished and mixed.
Total trust.
And that's because he wants it that way, not because we're being funny or he's being funny. It's just that he prefers to leave us completely alone because he knows we work better that way. And then when it's finished and he's paid for it, then he has to go and sell it to somebody, which is the hard part. In a way, I mean, it's easier to make a tape how you want it than it is to go and sell it to some major label which has got very unimaginative staff, as usual, who have a... We do all our own artworks. Well, he just laid it out. He didn't do the art. He just laid out the lettering and stuff. But Mark Manning's going to do that function on the next one.
Oh yeah.
Isn't he? But we just all discuss what we want and what things it could be and why, and then eventually, by a process of elimination, end up with the only thing it can be. And it's not necessarily the nicest design or something which people are going to like or which is even graphically correct. It's much more a result of lots of conversations leaving us with one solution.
Which is the way we work in a lot of things.
Well, what are you doing at the moment then?
That's going to cut because it's really sharp. Can you get her off that? What are we doing at the moment? We're doing a video to go with the track Terminus off the last album, and it'll go on a compilation video cassette that Double Vision are doing.
Did you get your live wolf then?
We didn't get it. I'm sorry to say. The woman then upped the price to £400.
She found out we were a pop group.
Oh God, really?
And we just thought,
the day.
yeah,
400 quid.
for part of the day.
Where did you get it from?
She lives in Windsor. Some woman in Windsor. But we just thought that's outrageous for a part of a day, just for the novelty of a wolf wandering about for a couple of seconds. It's a bit too much, especially as we're not being paid for the video in the first place. So we used Tanith instead.
What, put a mask on?
No, just a dog, you know. Wolf next time, maybe. This time it's the dog.
Tanith worked really well.
She was good, yeah. And also she's part of us, you know. She's part of the family, so... I mean, if it had been simple and it hadn't been more than £200, we'd have used the wolf. But when it starts getting to be an aggravation, it becomes not worth it. You start thinking about it too much. Instead of it being just a whim, it becomes a big deal, you know. And then it's not interesting. So we're doing that and working towards live events.
Have you done any gigs for TV?
Only one in Brixton in October.
Oh, that.
That's all. And we want to do a longer video cassette for sale in shops, you know. Maybe even one based around the whole of the new album or something. But not like a promo video, but actually like a story in a sense, or at least like a film would be, where the music is incidental music or whatever, or as illustrative as the images. Or maybe just using parts of the new. There's always lots to do.
How many, is that 1.5 sides or 2? I mean 4?
3.
Well,
You should do Paula next. That's a nice thought, isn't it?
Yeah, amazing story. I'm going to write it anyway.
What, on the off
It's recording now. Do you want to come closer because it's not very... Want me to go?
Yeah.
Yeah. It might be a bit gungy, as long as you don't mind the guns.
Oh, don't say that word. I hate that word.
You don't like gungy?
I hate the word. It makes me think horrible
You
things.
keep an eye on this. My labia's sore, but my clip's fine.
I can't see the point of having labia done, quite frankly.
Well, when I have
does it make any difference?
When I had my labia done, after it healed, I had 23 orgasms on the 12th.
23, that's a bit convenient, isn't it?
Well, it was like, we got to about 15, and we were going on and on.
Well, how long did it take?
About an hour and a half.
Oh.
So, you know, after that we thought, well, we might as well get up to 23. And like, when we got to 21, it was really like, oh God, you know, where'd you get the energy for 23? And I just collapsed, and we left it at 23. But
why? Why was it so? Why is it? Because you see, I'm thinking of having my clit done. That's the only place to have it done because I think it would look best aesthetically. I think nipples are a bit messy actually with them, but I can't understand with labia because I can't understand how it can feel any different. Isn't it psychological?
No, because especially with the genitalia, that the area there hasn't been investigated. So if it's pierced, you're bringing back new sensitivity to it and the nerves.
Well, I mean, your ears don't become...
No, but...
the same sort of thing, isn't it? I mean...
Not really, because your labia is more of an extension of your clitoris. You know, it's just the skin around it. I mean, not your, you know, your labia majora, which is outside, the one that's inside. Do you want to see it? That's the one I just had done, which is gungy.
Yeah, I can't see.
That's the one I've had done for a while. And that's the one from my clit, which is fine. Hold on. It goes through there.
Did it hurt?
No, the injection in my clit was a bit weird. It was, I suppose, just really sensitive. It didn't hurt. It's a weird feeling. And it's really nice. And I came home and I had a wank an hour later, so it wasn't sore.
But wasn't it, didn't you anaesthetise it?
Yeah, I put an injection in it.
Oh.
And that didn't hurt. So I didn't feel the actual piercing. And I told him to do the one in my labia first, so I could get used to it, but I didn't feel that. I think when I'm about 35, I'll have my nipples pierced.
Why? Why then?
When I finished having all my babies.
Oh.
You know, sort of breastfeeding and stuff like that.
Why? How many do you want to have?
5.
Oh.
2 and 3.
Sorry?
2 and 3. 23 is 5.
Oh.
I like to have 5 kids. It's a nice round number.
You can afford them.
I don't know if it costs that much.
I don't think you should ever have children unless you can afford them, in whatever sense afford means. You know, emotionally or like monetary wise.
Yeah, I think like after you had one, after you've had one, then you can, the next baby can have the clothes and everything like that, and you've got the pram or whatever. But it's okay them not having material things like clothes and sweets or whatever. I mean, they can just about pass without having them, but they do need the love. And if you're capable of giving 5 children the love, I mean, after I have another baby, like we'll have 2 kids, we might feel that, oh, 2 kids is enough.
You know, when you had the baby, did it make your cunt bigger? Well, inside.
But when I was actually...
No, now that you've had it, because you know they always say it makes women... No.
No. Not at all, because outside, my fan is much neater than it was before.
Oh.
I've got really neat straight away.
But, like your sort of labia, they sort of hang down a bit, don't they?
Yeah.
Because mine don't. Like, you know, in sort of magazines, like porno magazines, the women, they look like all this meat hangs out, and mine don't. I thought there was something wrong with me. I'm glad they don't.
My friend, hers is really neat. It's ultra neat.
Mm.
And it just looks strange because she looks like a little girl of 10. Well, her fanny looks like it belongs to a girl of 10.
Mm.
And I think neat fannies are nice, but hers is too neat. Really tucked in. I don't know if yours is like
Yeah,
that.
it is. Oh, I prefer it. I don't like.
Yeah.
How did you meet Jen?
Well, I was at school. I used to go to that school that's on the corner, junior school.
Oh, I haven't seen it, I don't think.
So when I was about 10, I used to see Jen.
Did he live around here?
Yeah.
Oh, so you fancied him when you were 10?
No, I just remember him as a character.
Yeah.
And then I sort of moved on and I went to my secondary school. And on a Saturday afternoon, I used to work in the supermarket. And Jen used to come in and buy milk. And I always used to talk to him because, like it's really boring working in the supermarket.
Mm.
And I thought he was the only person who had any charisma. And we used to sort of talk about, oh God, the price of milk has gone up again. And we used to be like two old women. And then he'd say, why don't you come round for a cup of tea? And I used to come round and have tea with my tea mates. And we had this really nice platonic relationship for 3 years. And all I used to do was come out and talk to him. And then when I was taking my A-levels, I was sort of saying, oh Jane, give me advice, what am I going to do? And it was really nice to have a good friend.
So when did it get, not be, when, you know what I mean?
When I was about 17, I don't know, I mean, the friendship was there and he was my friend and everything, but I sort of saw more deeply into it.
Mm.
So I think I'm slowly falling in love with you.
Ah.
It was really nice. And then I saw him on his birthday and he had these leather trousers on and they were really tight. And I thought, oh, you got a sexy body. And I like that side of it as well. And we were sort of getting closer together. And then we started sort of just kissing, just sweet kisses as I went home. And it all started off at the gig at the Lyceum in 81. It was February the 8th.
Mm.
I don't know if you know the Throbbing Whistle gig there. And I went along and me and Jen were talking and whatever, and they played first. And then Cabaret Voltaire were on. And Jen took me behind the stage and we were sort of canoodling for about an hour. And then it started from there. So from February, when it started, sort of, we went away in May and we got married in May.
What do you do? I don't really know much about what you do. Sort of. I've noticed you got credited on the back of that one.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Well, I play vibes.
Oh really? God, I
Yeah.
love that. I don't know.
Well, I don't play them professionally,
Mm.
but I can get sort of tunes out of them if I want and sounds. And you know Twilly's Whiskadoo? Well, I played with them.
Mm. Oh, they're marvellous and not used enough, I don't think.
No, they're a really nice instrument. And on the latest LP I played drums, just a bit of drums. And apart from that, ideas and things, and that one was really funny on Stolen Kisses, because Stolen Kisses Jen wrote it about me. So he said, I like you singing on it 5 words. And I said, fuck off, I can't sing to save my life, which I can't. So everyone persuaded me that I could sing, come into the studio and just sing these 5 words. So I sang these 5 words and the first take, no, second go, and it took 10 goes and they said, you're right, you can't sing.
Oh,
so I had to say these words in the end.
What are they?
I had to say, Jen says something.
I'll have to
with the
listen
words,
to
and
it, I
I
don't
say,
know that.
what you see, and then I say, is me. Do you want me to play it to you?
Yeah, it's, I recognise Mark Harmon warbling in the background.
I'll put that bit on. Here you are. Do you mind?
No, I don't. I just don't like its skin sort of coming off on me.
It doesn't really seem to be peeling off much.
Hmm.
Let's get
close to your face where it won't pick you up.
Oh, yeah.